What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the LIGHTYBOIS podcast.
Yo.
I'm one of your hosts, Austin.
And I'm Darren.
And in today's episode, we are going to be sitting down with a fellow filmmaker, Evan Rogers.
Ooh.
Awesome guy, originally from Los Angeles, but now resides in South Carolina, building a post-production house, and is really great at directing, editing, coloring, all those great things. So we can't wait to hear the insight and just really get a chance to chat with him in this episode. But before we do that, let's hit that intro. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. And I just want to say before we go any further, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. It really helps us grow the channel. And hit the bell to be notified of all future uploads.
Ding.
We're dropping podcasts every Friday, vlogs, tutorials, unboxings, all kinds of stuff. So we want to keep bringing you guys content. So make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out. And yeah, let's get into it. Mr. Evan Rogers, thank you so much for joining us today, for taking time out of your day to be with us here on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to do it virtually, but we're doing it well.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, you should just fly on in real quick and just come hang out on our huge podcast.
I would have been on the next flight. I would have. I really would have. I haven't even been out to your guys' neck of the woods yet, so I would love to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that in our near future for sure. We definitely need to link up and do something cool.
Definitely.
100%.
Yeah. So Evan, we kind of have a cool little story. My wife and I were vacationing in the Laguna Beach area, and we're just hanging out on all of our favorite cliffs and walking the beaches like we do. My wife really grew up going to Laguna and really falling in love with all the beaches, and has shown me all the sweet secret spots and all of the really neat places. And we were there vacationing, I would say, I don't know, was it a year ago? 2 years ago? A couple years ago. And there was a wedding happening at this hotel next to the beach, and I saw a film crew, and a guy with a camera, and I was like, oh, cool camera. And we were walking up the stairs, and we passed each other, and it happened to be this amazing man, Evan Rogers, here. And I was like, oh, let's talk gear. And you were like in the heat of shooting the wedding.
And it was hot that day too, and humid.
Super hot, super humid. But I was like, ooh, cameras. And we started talking for a minute. But yeah, we really just passed each other on the stairs.
It was so cool, man. It was like, it's one of those things where I feel like it happens pretty often in our industry, randomly, that you meet somebody like that. But it's always when I was just thinking of this yesterday, it's always when you're in the environment shooting something for somebody that you meet somebody else that potentially takes you down a new track. Because I feel like film does that for people.
Yeah.
Where it's like such an amazing thing to so many people, to us, of course, but like to people on the outside, they're like, oh, what's up? And for you that were, you were already there. I was climbing the stairs, already sweating my butt off. And I'm like, oh, dude, this guy's cool. Like, I wonder. And then to find out you're not even from here, and I was in transition out of here. It was just so cool, man. Timing was just, it's a God thing,
It's super sick because I was like, crap, I got to connect with this dude somehow. And you told me your Instagram, and I forget everything. Ask Austin.
Yeah.
Everyone's names.
Names are not.
Handles, whatever. And so my wife and I are at the crosswalk, just a couple 100 feet away from where I just had met you. And you were like, hey, Evan Rogers, or I think that's what you told me, your account. And so I just looked it up really quick, and I remembered, and I just followed you. And then we kind of linked up from there and kind of kept in contact with your journey, moving with your wife, and now crushing all these projects and doing all this really cool stuff. And it's been really fun to watch from afar. But yeah, it was just super wild. Like you said, people in filmmakers in the wild, see gear, and it kind of brings them together.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and honestly, it's funny that, the way that happened. And like I mentioned, it was cool that we were in flux at that point when you met me. I was at a point where that was the last. I don't shoot weddings normally. I just happened to shoot it because it was one of my friends' brothers. Wow. And I was just doing that as I gotta, support my buddy and try to help him out. But that was in between us already seeing Greenville, where we are now, Greenville, South Carolina. And we had flown back. We had already put a deposit down. You met us in the most flux moment of our last year. Wow. And so briefly after that, maybe a week and a half after that, we had moved officially out there. We flew back out there. Everything was there, and we started life over. And so it's just, when stuff like that happens, man, it's cool, because it's like, you were at the top of my brain, obviously, I think because you guys do amazing work, and that caught my eye, but also just because you remember things like that in moments that are like, to your point, when you looked me up right away, it was like, oh, this is crazy. Like, you're vacationing here. I don't know. It's just weird stuff like that that just, that's even storytelling in itself. So I think it's appealing to us that that happened that way, you know?
Oh, for sure.
It's awesome. Should make a short film about it.
No doubt.
It's awesome. Well, Evan, I haven't had a chance to meet you in person yet, but from every interaction I've had with you, from following you on social media, all of that, you seem like a really great guy. But tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about your family, your company, what you specialize in, and even like, how was the move to Greenville and in your company of transitioning? Just kind of give us an overview. Yeah,
no problem. So I'm an LA kid. I grew up, my dad was in the studios, so I kind of grew up around film industry growing up, and my mom was a fine artist. Pretty cool. I can't believe both of them met. I guess it makes sense why they got married that way, because they were both arts lovers, but both very talented and both very supporting of me and my younger brother in arts. And also in a variety of skill sets. Like they always knew, education first above anything. And then following that was, if you wanted to pursue something, we'll support you, but you've got to go all in on something. And I think that mentality to me really stuck in my head from a young age. My first time I picked up a camera was probably like 10-ish years old, like where I really wanted to start shooting. And I felt it at that age that something was different with doing this. Like most of us feel this way, I think, with a camera.
Yep.
And so I shot for fun with friends and skits and shorts and different things like that, and started to really fall in love with it. And around 16, I had been doing it for a couple years. I think, before that, around 14, when the first GoPro came out, I was watching sports with my dad like we always did, and I played sports throughout my life. And I was like, whoa, like crazy to see what this tiny camera's doing when the commercials would come on. Like, wow, this guy's kayaking over, you probably remember it, like the guys that were like kayaking over the cliffs, and it was to Skrillex. What's it called? Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites. That song that was so popular. 2013 or whatever, dude. 2011.
The good old days.
And the good days. And I remember watching that and being like, this thing could change everything. Because prior to that, I was just on like a camcorder.
Sure.
That was my parents. To tape. I'm proud to say that we were all, this generation was still in tape before digital.
Yep, that's right.
We started that way. But no, I remember the seeing what that could do. And that was an enabling device for me, because now I'm out with my friends and I'm not worrying about focus. I'm not worrying about settings at that time. And I think that was perfect for me, because it cultivated how to storytell, even if it's just putting together cuts with friends, right? Like just goofing around, skating and doing all that stuff growing up in California, like going to the beach and doing that. And that transitioned me into my first opportunity for work, which was through my local church that I was going to needed, this guy that was in my youth ministry was like, hey, I need an intern, and I'm working at a local broadcast station. It's starting to expand. We're kind of nationwide now and good viewership, and I need you to come in, and I think I believe in you. I think you could learn a lot of stuff. And so I assistant edited for him for I was at the company 16 to 21. Wow. But I stepped through all of the technical and some business and some of the growth stages of that whole period, because it was such a, those are formative years for sure. Yeah. And I remember being in there and seeing further than that. It wasn't my favorite thing, but I was so excited to have any sort of film job where I got paid to do it.
Yeah.
And eventually that boss left, and I eventually ended up in college. It was something I felt like I could manage, and I somehow was able to take over his role at part-time pay that eventually became full-time.
Wow.
And just took steps of initiative like we all got to do if we want to be successful in this business. And then eventually went to the coast, left that job, went to the coast and worked for a startup doing work with LinkedIn and Fiverr and different things like that. Very corporate, completely different from the broadcast world and the, more narrative world.
Yep.
And this is what will transition me to out in the East Coast. I was there for about 18 months. We did about 120 hour length courses where I had built posts for the entirety of that, besides a motion artist. And I was burned and felt like, this is not good for me. I feel like my healthy lifestyle was kind of gone. We were newly married, paying way too much for rent and just feeling unfulfilled. And honestly, on a spiritual level, felt like I was kind of horizontally looking out at the world instead of vertically. And I think God took that one stressful moment for me in January of last year to tell me, hey, something's wrong here. You need to let's talk. Essentially.
Yeah.
Like you're looking for your fulfillment and worth horizontally amongst your bosses. And it was a startup, so we were trying to grow and equity and different things like that. And none of that came to fruition, but it was an open posture of prayer moment for me, where me and my wife I was working from home. It was right after break instead of being in the office for once. And it was like a on the knees type of a prayer that was like, please just give me direction. Like I forfeit my will here, and I should have known better. Like we all should do probably. I should have known that was probably coming, but it was great for me and her because it was like a restart. And that exact month, our year lease was up. And we were like, I don't know what's next. And I've shared with you guys that we ended up road tripping around the U.S., especially the southern U.S. I got let go. What I meant to say is I got let go that day is what finishes that story, which is even crazier.
Wow.
And was about to quit. And so God spared me in that and gave me, the unemployment while I had it. And that was awesome. And it freed us up to road trip. Got out to Greenville because one of my best friends, Nick Worrell, lives out here. And felt like, wow, this is slower pace of life, cost of living's less. And I felt on the entrepreneurial side, something was happening. Something's definitely happening out here. And it's between Atlanta and Charlotte. You're somewhat close to New York. It's like less than 2-hour flight to New York, which is still a film capital. You're, near Florida, like centrally located. Where in California, you can't even get to Sacramento in 6 hours driving.
Right. I know. Yeah.
It's like,
that's crazy.
I was like, I feel like I'm landlocked and I needed to grow, and I think God used that and made it really clear that, hey, you should go check out this place, Greenville, which I never even saw the Carolinas in my life. I had no idea what it was like out here. And it was just the craziest thing. And we felt like everything from there started to change as far as, like I mentioned, starting to look vertically again for our needs before we're looking to fulfill them ourselves. Like God has a plan for where we are and what we're doing. And it was just a very changing thing. So I don't know if that helps, but it's definitely a big part of where I'm at now, I feel like, because he's taken me this far. And like as you guys know, trials, eventually show us more about our love for God, for our Savior. Like that to me was what came through was, wow, if now I feel like I'm in a trial, I know that he brought us through that and he made it so clear. We were so like depressed during that time, but we knew something was happening. And so that's a big part of my story now. And I try to focus my efforts in film to try to, witness to people and, try to give other people a chance, be a net giver, right? Give other people the, confidence that they need to try to do well in this business, because it's very isolating, as you know. So I don't know if that catches it up. I've tried to make a more succinct story, but it's a pretty long one. So I hope it wasn't too long.
Totally.
No, it's awesome. I think you gave us all the right pieces.
Yeah.
It's always tough to be like, oh, tell me your story, man.
Yeah.
Like, I have a hot mess story. Like, you got 3 hours, bro? Like, I'll tell you some stories. But yeah, I think one of the things that really stands out about your story and the really cool just faithfulness of God is you were faithful with the things that God was putting in your hand. Like sometimes you didn't understand why or what you were going to do next, but you knew okay, I'm going to like work in broadcast for a while. That's not like the sexiest thing in the world. And you like stuck there for a while. And I mean, he promoted you, and like God downloaded tons of knowledge, and like you learned a ton. And I think, yeah, it made you who you are as a filmmaker today. And I think sometimes as filmmakers, we're like, man, let's do the next cool thing, or I want to shoot this really cool music video, or I want to, you know, work with this huge client with a huge budget. But like, would you be ready for that huge client or that huge budget if it just came on your plate right now?
No.
That's something that we've always battled. Like, yeah, we always want to do bigger and better things, but I think the reason like we've been able to grow as well is because we've been faithful with the little tiny coffee shop that came to us and said, I have a couple $100, and like, you know, starting somewhere, or the music artist that came up to us and like, hey guys, like we just don't have a budget, but we want to shoot music videos. So we were faithful, shot it, you know, maybe bless them, gave them a discount or whatever. And I know there's a lot of people that, hey, you know, value your worth, make sure you charge people what you're worth, which I totally agree. But I do believe that there's something to be said with adding value to people first. And that's really what we try to do. It sounds like that's really what you've done. Like you edited for how many years for this guy, and like served him faithfully. And then, just continued to see your story unfold. So it's super encouraging. And I love that. I mean, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I love what you said about being a net giver. I like that term a lot.
I heard
That's
that word
really
last
cool.
night. I can't fully take credit for that.
Wow.
I heard that last night from a more elderly gentleman that was talking about, more just businessy stuff, and he was like focused on really sharing that knowledge with people. And I think that's what I mean. We're here for a blip. That's the thing that I feel like gets so confused. Is honestly, film guys that do it and run their own business, we're entrepreneurs at heart, I think.
Yeah.
And storytelling is our medium, and that's amazing. It's something that's so rare. Me and one of my buddies were talking about that yesterday. That is so. You have to have such a thick skin to get through all the crap that we have to get through, or you have to do your time. Like I worked for a boss for, like I was sharing for near 7-8 years before I ever even thought about freelancing. And even then I wasn't sure if I was going to do that.
Totally.
And so to see what God has done with that is really cool. But it really showed to me how if you focus, one of the things I do out here is me and my buddy Max Huggins had a weird similar story and he was in Denver and we moved to Greenville the same week. We had a mutual that connected us. We met up and we were like, the one thing that we just, I'll sum it up on both sides, but we both felt like the one thing that was missing, and partly because of COVID, is the in-person connectivity with a group of people that doesn't feel like they're at each other's throats, which was very LA, just very competitive because people are trying to get their bread, really, just to feed family and do all that stuff. But you're competing with 40 other directors if you're bidding for something, or whatever job. And we were just talking about that and how that built like a thicker skin for us. But what we really missed was, hey, we don't have an environment where we're talking to guys actively. I think we individually were, but if there's some small community, Greenville's under 100,000 people right now. And if there's a small community where you can make a impact on a local film market that's small right now, there's probably about 150 guys out here, I would say, that are in and out of work or just solo guys doing their thing, videographers, that kind of type, or there's more regimented crews and stuff like that. But we essentially started a meetup that would be every single week, and we go to a brewery and we hang out, and guys come from anywhere, and it's open invite for anybody, and we all just talk shop, and there's no real structure to it, but it's just a chance to, hey, let's before this gets cutthroat out here, let's figure out a way where the community can be here and in person and talking. And so we've been doing it every single week for 9 months so far. And it's been one of the most amazing blessings. You guys can come anytime you want.
Bro, that honestly, like you
so
just
cool
saying,
though.
You just saying that like gets me pumped because that's like,
we've always talked about doing that for Omaha. And
you should.
Just because it's the same.
Is anybody doing it? You should.
It's obviously a bigger city, so there are a few like very established production companies that are working with your Fortune 500 and Fortune 300 companies here in town, and like we have those. So like it's a little bit bigger, but it's weird how it's very segmented. So you have like the older guys who really are kind of on their way out of the industry within the next 5 to 10 years. And then you have the younger generation of videographers where most of them are what I would just call videographers, but there are a few companies of younger guys that are sprouting up that are really talented, doing really great work. But I don't really feel like there is a super solid community here.
There isn't.
It's very closed off. People who
Yeah.
are in the industry, there's like a barrier where they kind of keep to their people and kind of keep close ties on their relationships, their knowledge, all of that stuff. It's not really openly shared. And that's what I love about you. And what we've always tried to do is just be open. Because if you're adding net value, like you said, it's going to come back to you. That's just the principle that we believe in. And it's biblical.
And that's not even why for me. The why of that is, of course, that is something that can come from that, of course.
Right.
And if God wants to use it that way, great. But to me, and Max is a believer too, and to both of us, we were like, early on, we saw conversations for the gospel happening, even if it was a matter of kind of second-handedly, like it would be showing up to a meetup and making somebody feel, warm. Because really, I try to show up and listen. That's really, that's something I will say in the last year has been a huge humbling thing for me. My wife's grandpa passed, and that was one of the things that he was really amazing at, was just sitting in the room and listening to people. And he would sum everything up into one sentence when he had to speak. And I learned so much from him on that, where I'm like, man, I want to put that into practice. And that with the meetup, that's kind of what happens is I want to sit and hear people out and hear people's stories, because everybody has something valuable to add in our industry or in the world, right? Like everybody has something to share that God's put on their heart. And so I feel like if you're able to sit and listen to people, and hopefully that grows some trust with guys that you can befriend, and then eventually guys or gals, but it's our turnout's mostly dudes, because I feel like that's what our industry is, unfortunately. Right now, we need to help that. It's ridiculous, but just to be an open voice and just a listener to somebody, eventually that could lead to conversations for Christ. And I see him working in that way, and
Absolutely.
that's I think to me more of the focus. But then you're totally right. I mean, what it has done for my network of guys that I can call on, because I know they know how to do, I know so many people that DP out here, but I also know there's guys that I could call that are just fresh out of college that are great PAs, that could be an awesome PA for set, or, different things like that. I know people's strengths because I talk to them all the time. That's where those things are huge, because it takes a lot of effort out of your week. I mean, it's like 3 hours. We do like 3 hours in a night sometimes where they're top to bottom. So, but you guys know the investment in other people, like we've been talking about, is the most important thing, because that's what's growing. We're trying to elevate the level of film out here before it even really becomes a market. So that's what we're thinking it through.
Love that. That's awesome.
So good.
I had a question and I forgot it.
Remember.
This is fun, man. I love talking to y'all.
Yeah, this is awesome. I think I remembered it. So, as you're talking about like building different relationships and then being able to contract guys out and, have PAs and DPs and all of that stuff, really like just complete transparency. We have never been on a film set where there's a PA, where there's roles really. Where like, just give us a tip. Like, where did you, obviously the broadcast world, I would assume helped with that. But maybe for some of our listeners out there who are wanting to learn to direct, or wanting to learn to DP, or to be kind of a major role on set, if you don't have access to something like that, where would you go to learn the ins and outs of who plays what role and what roles do I need on set? I mean, there's some sets where, you really just need a camera operator that can set up a boom pole and record audio. So yeah, maybe give us a few tips on that. What would you say to somebody who doesn't have the opportunity to shadow on set or go to film school or something like that?
Yeah. Well, specifically what I've learned from mentors and people that I look up to from LA, and the reasoning for the regimenting, really, part of it's a union thing in LA, which makes sense. That's how men and women make their money out there, is the unions rep them.
Yeah.
But it's to me what I've learned and gathered. If I'm assembling a project and I'm the director, but I also am the production company, what I'm looking for is guys that I trust, that I've had many conversations with, that I've done, a handful of projects with in the past, or different things like that of all different levels that I know I can call on to complement what I'm trying to do. People that are parts of me. Because to your guys' point, I think we're in a world now where accessibility with all kinds of things, from cameras to lighting to everything, has become so high. You're able to do everything yourself. Me and a buddy were just talking yesterday. There's no reason anymore really to have grip and electric, or even just like a gaffer. You don't even need somebody to actually set up lights anymore hardly, because there's no power. Everything's household powered now. You can plug right into the wall. You don't need a converter, different things like that. Things are changing, which I think, and part of the YouTube generation is, content creators, one-man band guys that come out, the Peter McKinnons of the world. But what I've learned is regimenting. If you have budget and you're able to do that in a way that you feel comfortable, is the best thing you could do for your set, because you have more collaborators that help with your vision. If you're sitting at the top and you have the story in mind, like for a doc, for example, something like that, if I'm directing a doc, I want to be fully focused on the interview, any scenes that we're staging, different things like that, where I can work directly with the talent. If I have a camera in my hand, I'm focusing on the technical and the story. But if I move that off to somebody I trust, like a DP, that's, with me on the story, that understands the story, but is only handling that technical, and I'm only handling the story, I'm better off that way. That's my mind. Some people like to have a camera on and direct, but if you really stage out roles, so for example, a recent shoot, I directed. My buddy Justin was a DP. My friend Max is a producer who helped me top to bottom, with landing the gigs, getting everything ready technically for the shoot, scheduling, all of that stuff, and will help me in post as well. We had a gaffer who was handling all lighting and was answering directly to my DP. We had a camera operator, AC, so somebody to run actually operating the camera and focus and everything like that. And we had a PA. So the PA was just there to help and do whatever he needed to do to pick up the pieces. But that whole day, all I worried about was me and the client. And I didn't have to worry about anything else. And for me, if I can focus that much effort on that, the frames that came out of it are some of the best I've done. And I'll say this because I've been not directing for a long time. I've been in an editor role, taking notes from a director for 7 years. I think that's part of my recent excitement to go out and direct again. I think I was in the editing role, you're essentially, if you do it all, you're in the flow of it and you remember what you shot and stuff. But if I'm working directly with directors and as an editor, the editor is essentially a second director, because they're taking all their feedback from set, but then they are assembling the story just as much as the director is, right? And I've being sitting in the seat for 7-ish years, and still with my post house, still sitting in the chair taking notes, you get better and better at forming how you receive feedback and how you want to give feedback. And so that led me more recently to getting back into directing, is what I was saying. But having a regimented crew that all adds value to the shoot, that you couldn't spread yourself all that way on set. You can't always do all those details, or you miss something, then you wish you had it in post. Those are reasons why I try to give people opportunity to be involved, because I know that I would prefer not to also have to DP if I'm directing, and they add value. Like I'm saying, it's really as simple as that.
Oh, that was all really great. I think it's tough for us sometimes to gauge, because there's two of us. It's interesting because right now, we're trying to really dive into our roles where Darren really plays the director role and I play more the DP role. I love shooting, and I feel like I'm pretty good at it. So if I can do that all day and just make sure the shot looks good. But yeah, it's kind of tough sometimes to determine, do we need a PA? And obviously we have 3 full-time employees that we could train to do those things. So I'm like, should we be, training one of them to be a really great PA and one of them to be a really great AC? And like, should we kind of have roles on every set that we get to? But no, that's super helpful. Thanks for sharing.
For sure.
It's encouraging too. And it makes sense that you said that you kind of sat in the editor's seat, but now you're directing and you kind of see, cause like when you're chopping up the edit, like you're deciding what pieces are staying and what are going. And I love the editing process. It's one of my favorites. I love putting the story together. I love picking out the B-roll. I love deciding on kind of close enough, like what the color should and what it's going to look like, adding sound effects, like all that stuff. Like I nerd out hard about it. And so I love it. And then now we bought a director's monitor and we bought a wireless system and we're, operating. We just shot a music video and I was like we bought a director's chair because I'm like, we're doing it. Like, this is real.
I saw that on your story.
Yeah,
that was funny. That had me laughing.
Being silly. We're always being silly, doing something. But we got the chair, got the monitor and all the stuff. And I'm like sitting here and I'm like, this is so weird. Like we've never been able to do this in 3.5 years. I've never been able to sit, look at something and yell and be like, hey, don't do that. Or Austin, do that. And I'm like, this is incredible. Cause I've arched over his shoulder watching him shoot forever. And most of the time I was shooting a second angle. We just recently just kind of locked into just shooting one angle. We shot like 2 angles for forever. It was like super unnecessary. But we just like roll a 35 and an 85 and, we had a safe angle and we'd roll that way. But yeah, I've been really loving what we're doing, but I want to know more about it. And it's cool that you had like mentors and guys that you looked up to or people you worked under. But unfortunately here, they're just like, we are unaware of it if it's out there, but people that like want guys like us that shoot on DSLR cameras and they think like, we're not worthy of calling ourselves filmmakers because we don't own all these things and have all this knowledge or do things the old way. Like we get crap for using LED lights. We get crap for using DSLRs. We get crap for using just the lenses that we use. I mean, whatever, you name it. We've been called out a couple times. And so it's interesting. So we've honestly just by nature and by just kind of some of that stuff really kept to ourselves and really like kind of stayed in our own bubble. And the people that we interact with most are the people from our church. The people that we've hired are from our church that we've poured into for a couple of years, teaching them everything we know. And so it's not that we don't want to be a part of the film industry, but it has never been attractive. It's never any forum, any blog. Like we've read stuff like horror stories. You were just talking about the cutthroatness of LA, and I lived in LA for a while and not in the film industry, but I worked in Jimmy Kimmel and like saw like how I was an audience coordinator, so I was just like a fly on the wall, but I got to see some of that stuff and it's very like intimidating. And so, yeah, I mean, we want to learn it so bad. And we've like reached out to people and like, hey, can we come be on set? Like, we'll do anything. We'll pay for our flights. And we just haven't gotten to the point of doing it. We've talked to a lot of people and they said that we could. And when we try to lock something in, it just doesn't work out. And so,
well, you're always welcome on my set for real. Like I'm not even kidding, guys. To put this in perspective, that makes me sad because honestly, I have to come from a place of complete honesty and tell you that most of the people that are in my life, any mentors or people like that, were people I sought out.
Sure.
And there's been nothing about my story that has been, I mean, don't get me wrong. Of course, it was like a huge blessing when I first got approached for that first job and somebody believed in me enough to give me money to do what I love to do. But at that stage, I knew that I'm forecasting 10 years ahead. I knew that sitting in that role was going to give me those chances later on. And so I sat for 7 years essentially and took time to learn the business. And anytime I wasn't editing, I was out on sets. I was trying to go shoot myself. Like you guys know, you do the same thing, I'm sure. Like you have to be hungry at any aspect. But there's been people that I know that have been, So I'll rephrase it. Essentially, there's times where I feel like guys in our industry are met with a tremendous opportunity for something, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes are not even ready for it. And there's guys that have been hustling in the shadows for years that don't even sniff that opportunity and are trying to find it. And sure. I'm not, there's nothing wrong with either one of those things. But as being one of the guys that, you know, watched buddies and different things land the massive stuff and, you know, just had been wanting that so much, I think that created a hunger, a deeper hunger for me. And so I'm of course stoked whenever somebody gets an opportunity like that, but it makes me like go, okay, I've gotta, you know, not unhealthily, but I really want to get to that level. And then you see though, over time, like right now I'm, you know, doing brand stories in town and it's small business stuff that I'm directing, or on the edit post-production side, you know, I'm starting to build a team that way, and I'm getting stuff from LA, still doing some cool stuff and color and all that. But those things currently on the directing side are not, you know, they're cool. And I think if I shoot it correctly and we get the right content out of it on the story side, it's usable. But that's, of course, I would rather be out there, you know, directing docs all the time or bigger music videos. And so I think there's the stage of like, of waiting. And I think we're all young dudes. And I think there's always going to be a moment for somebody that's hustling. Yeah. That's working very hard, driven. Yeah. And hustle has a negative slant sometimes. But the drive that we all share, I think that when we get knocked down, we jump back up because we have the vision forward of where we want to be and what we want to do. And I think we're in that stage where all of us at our age range are making money doing it, which is amazing. Yeah. But eventually we'll get to the more dream-based things that you've done enough time to where you can tell somebody in reality, hey, you know, I want to do this doc. Thank you for approaching me, but this is what it's going to cost. This is what it's going to take. And I have actual representation for how good this style of storytelling looks when I get to do it. You know what I mean? It's not a selfish thing. It's just that you've done the time. So I hate to hear that, but at the same time, it's like that's kind of that like chip on the shoulder mentality you have to have a bit of, you know? And I think it sounds like we all share that, because on the mentor side and the opportunity side, those were things that I was doing. You know, I was investing in those things before those things came, right? So I don't know if that's helpful at all, but I understand.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's encouraging. And I definitely know that like we will get to do the projects that we dream of someday. And for right now, like I think the biggest thing that I can do personally is just be super thankful for any client that comes in the door that we were working with. And like, we were just talking about this yesterday. We got off the phone with a client and we're like, man, like we have awesome clients, even though like we're shooting construction builds in Minnesota and minus 10 degree weather. And like, we're doing, you know, some meat stuff for a ranching company. Like, you know, it's not the Adidas commercial that's like the dream goal for us, but like, we're just thinking about it. We're like, man, thank you. Like, thank God for these clients, because without this, like I would still way rather be doing this, even working on projects that aren't as exciting than working at Costco, which is what we always joke about being, you know, the alternative is, we love working for Costco. But
we love Costco. Don't get me wrong. I love me some Costco, but to work there, I'm good.
No, you're right. I mean, that's the thing is the blessing, how cool it is that we have worked hard enough to where people recognize there's something there to hire us. And I was just thinking about how most people don't quite understand, the clients a lot of times don't fully understand that we're a passion-driven storytelling heart business. That's what we do. And a lot of times when we quote things and they're like too much, or, you know, they're just like not right now, or different things like that, I think that's a lot based through, you know, more practical means. I don't think they see all the time why we do this or what we would add to them. I think they see it as a video. But 100%. I know from your guys' stuff as well that we share this storytelling side, which is what I was really like, what I've wanted to do forever. And so if we're able to do that and get paid to do that, whoever it is, it doesn't matter. That's huge. Yeah. And we're building that style that eventually we have enough to represent when Adidas calls and says, hey, we need this. And that's like one of those things you can't plan for that. It's
Right.
one of those things that, unless you know somebody, but it's one of those things that is like a call.
Yeah.
And the more well-connected you are, you're ready for those times. You know, I feel like maybe all of us would feel, you know, scared probably a little bit, but like stoked that we have an opportunity that big. And we would probably shine in it for the most part. You know, I think if you've done enough of the time, you would.
Totally.
But yeah, I don't know. It's I agree.
It's the whole like preparation meets opportunity thing. Like you have to have the preparation done so that the opportunity comes, you're ready for it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool, man. Well, as we kind of wind down here, what are you most excited about right now? Like what's going on that you're like, I'm really looking forward to this, or what have you done recently that you're super excited about? What's next for Evan Rogers?
Sure. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so at the moment, the transition out here led me to leaning hard still with post-production. So I'm currently building early stages of a post house, which is really exciting to me because I know it the best. It's the one thing in the industry that I really understand the very best. And so edit clients and different things like that are still rolling in from LA, and I'm growing the market out there. I'm not even there, and they don't care, and it's pretty cool. I think that's amazing. And just continuing to build that, and then more on the personal side, like the color side is a service that I offer because I believe that it's part of that delivery phase that I think a lot of people don't have budget for or don't know they need. And after studying a lot of lighting and, you know, different things in LA, when I was trying to DP for some time, and I got into software like DaVinci and realized the power in it and how similar it was to being on set and lighting something properly. And I started connecting the dots and realized that it was a great expression for me on the side of like, oh, this is a way for me to not worry about the production aspect of it. I can just approach this with my creative eye and attach worth and meaning to it and make something pop. That's my style on the color side is very make it vibrant, pop, nice contrast, but has a film texture that feels real to it. Even if that's grain or different things like that I add in that make, you know, on the technical side that make that happen. I'm a story-based colorist where I'm always trying to understand where or what the client is going for, especially if it's a narrative or a music video or different things like that. So that's something I'm building when I'm in the seat. I'm starting to kind of build, like I mentioned, starting to outsource a bit and bring in team on the edit side and trying to build that out. So I do a little less of that. And that's working great. Guys are hungry, and, you know, it's ultimately getting them involved almost as assistant editors to help me do more and be more on quality control and not just the bare bones of assembling. And then, you know, on the directing side, on the production side, I'm really investing time into that again, because I think, like I mentioned earlier, that's really a calling for me. Big time being out. And as you guys know, being out on set with people is the coolest thing in the world. I think it's the very coolest thing. It's amazing to be in post, but it is so much more fulfilling for me to be out with people and really understanding story. And, you know, on the doc side, I'm a huge fan of doc stuff. I sit in between natural, like raw storytelling and doing crazy stuff with music videos, like, you know, like Tron Legacy or different things like that. Like, I don't know what my visual style is besides a merging of those two.
Sure.
But definitely love sitting and telling stories and getting, like we were talking about, getting people involved in that process to help me be better and to help see new perspectives I didn't see and work with new people. And so there's a number of cool opportunities on the directing side coming through. And I'm just blessed, man. I see the level of drive and work that I put into this for near 10 years professionally. And it's just cool to see where you can go if you work hard enough at it, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And I think you guys would attest to the same thing. And so I'm just going to continue to sit in the seat and be humbled and learn and go out and do what I know to do best. So it's kind of where I'm at. So thanks for asking that.
Yeah.
That's what's going forward this year, and hoping that next year really yields results of this year. 'Cause I think 2021 was transitioning. This year I planted. Next year I think is going to be yielding results that I've been, doing this year heavily. So we'll see. We'll see.
That's
I'm
awesome.
just staying content as I can.
Yeah, dude. I love it.
Reaping the harvest.
Yeah, man. Love the spirit.
Yes.
And the way that you talk about the future, is totally our language. So love it. Well, Evan, thank you again so much for your time today. Where can we find you on social media so we can make sure everybody goes and follows you, checks out your awesome content?
Thanks. Yeah, no, personal, I'm basically only on Instagram right now. So personal is Evan, letter M, Rogers, Rogers. And my professional account is Evan Rogers Film. It's pretty simple. I mostly prefer to direct people to my website, which is just evanrogersfilm.com, but you can find me there as well. That's my most curated source of my work, more than the gram.
Sure.
But you find me in any of those places. So
Awesome.
It's hard to keep up with all of the platforms.
ridiculous. Could I say
That's a
one
whole
thing real quick?
Yeah.
to you
Yeah.
guys?
Yeah.
I just wanted to echo honestly what I feel like you guys have done so well. And to me, honestly, just on the observing side, we've had, I met Darren, but it's just so cool that we connected over a call, and then just through social media, seeing what you guys are building over there is really exciting to me, because you're in a side of the country that needs it too. That's why I moved out here, partly because I knew there was a need for what we do out here.
Yeah.
And what you guys are doing and what you're building in your studio and the connections that you're making and all that stuff is really inspiring to me. And I hope that people out there see it, because it's really cool. I mean, seriously, the amount that you're sharing from BTS to actual final product is so engaging, and it really catches my eye. So you don't have to air this bit, but I just wanted to tell you that personally.
Thanks, man.
Thanks. That means a lot.
Yeah,
Dude.
more than you know.
Yep.
For sure. Well, cool. Well, as we wrap up, Evan, is there anything else that you would leave our listeners with? Any, one-liner, bit of nugget, anything you got?
Yeah, no, I do. Plot your course. Determine what you're going after and just stick to it. You'll have ways to, veer off of the path when you might, grow and change as a person and realize that it's not the same, but you might still come back to that resolute purpose that you have and just stick with it, because you can see the fruits of it every day if you really look for it. And God's leading you in a way that you don't really know until you get there, and we're forever learning. So that's something I've learned, is always learning and staying humble that way, and you can go pretty far and make relationships with people, cool
Amen.
people.
Yeah. Cool
Amen.
people.
Yeah, relationships are the best.
Anybody, but cool people I love.
Heck yeah. Well, bro, thank you so much. This has been super inspiring for me. Yeah. I learned a lot, and can we be best friends forever?
Oh yeah, you got it. No problem. Already.
But seriously, it would be awesome to one day, and I see in the future,
for sure.
working on something together. And we would love to even come out there. You come out here. That's the beautiful thing about our industry. We'll just book something and figure it out, and we'll meet up and shoot something cool. But
I love it.
Yeah, so thank you so much. We really valued this. Hopefully this was valuable to you guys, and you guys were as inspired as us. We definitely will take all of this. Probably I will go back and re-listen to this just to grab some of the nuggets. Evan shared a ton of great stuff. So thank you guys so much. If you're listening on YouTube, be sure to follow the channel, be sure to like the video, and be sure to hit the notifications so that you know every single time that we drop a video. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, be sure to give us a rating, whatever you think. We just love reading the ratings. It helps give us gas and fuel in the tank to keep on going and keep on running this podcast. But we love you guys so much, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Peace.